June 26th.
Oh boy. Hit the intro wait, that's not the intro music.
Oh, check it out.
That was the background switch.
Nice.
Intro music.
June 26th, Ian.
June 26th, 2024, year of our Lord or something. I don't know.
Today is Wednesday, and today is the day before the U.S. president, the Biden versus Trump debate or debacle, depending on what you want to call it. Debatical.
Uh-huh.
No matter which side of the fence you're on, people are tuning in. Lots of people are going to check it out.
That's true.
I'm going to watch it.
Yeah.
Many of you probably know where I stand between these two gentlemen.
Is it up past everybody's bedtime, including the participants?
I don't know what time it starts. Probably going to start like 8 p.m. Eastern,
yeah.
I think.
Sure. That makes sense.
Yeah. So anyway, this whole insanity in the U.S. progresses.
Yes, it continues, much to the chagrin of our European and other countries having to look on at it, whatever.
Yeah, like having to, chew their fingernails, hoping that, we have a president who knows what the job is and is actually sane and rational. Anyway, how you guys doing?
Everything's good. So we do have topics today. Let me flag those up. Boop, it went right in the middle of J. So we do have for real this time, new cult unlocked. We will actually talk about that. We have shopping cart morals and morality. That one is a thing. Rock people. A little watermelon segment, which we may or may not... you may be not expecting, and the Great Fire of ...
So which one of those do you think Steve would want to do?
I think Steve's going to want to do the Great Fire of, probably. The Rock People one is silly, and the Shopping Cart Morals one, I think we should have him here so we discuss.
Then I choose watermelon.
Okay, we will do the the watermelon one is also... Let's do the new cult unlock just to start, since that's at the beginning. And that'll be a fun one.
You can clearly see who's in charge of the show here.
That's just because I had it, but it's not really any other reason. Although I forgot to actually pull it up. But you could talk to chat for just a second.
Well, I'll talk to you instead.
Yeah, okay.
So, Ian, I have been working out for a month now.
Okay. Is it? How's it hanging?
It's going great, but I mean, COVID took more out of me than I thought. Living through that pandemic and the malaise and...
I think it's put more into you than you thought.
It did. Yeah, no, I definitely I don't know what it was. My wife and I just could not get motivated. We were homeschooling our kids, which was unbelievably bad. And then, I was trying to work out and then I don't know, it was bad. It just was a bad time.
Yeah.
So this is the first time that I've been consistent enough where I'm really noticing some changes and everything, which is great. And I'd like to say to people out there, exercise. Not that, I am no exercise guru. I have been working out on and off my entire life, though. I've had many doctors tell me that there is no panacea in medicine and in your diet or anything. The closest that you can get is regular exercise.
True.
It really does solve more problems than it could ever possibly make if you're doing it correctly. The increase in muscle mass increases your metabolism because your body burns more calories to maintain the muscle that it has. you're improving your cardiovascular system, which is incredibly important to a long, healthy life. Somebody says they run marathons as their hobby. That's a big commitment, man. Marathons are no joke. I don't think I could ever do that. I weigh too much. I'm big boned. That's what they used to tell me when I was a kid. You're big boned. And I didn't know what that meant, and I still kind of don't. But I just know that I could never run that far. My body would break apart. I would fall apart in pieces halfway through. I would just my arm would be like 20 steps behind me. So I'm just trying to encourage people. It's a good thing to do. It's, in the United States, summer is here.
What's that crazy marathon? That's not really a marathon, but it's like the
mud running
Spartan race.
Oh, the Spartan one, man.
Where you just climb up ropes and stuff like that, and it's like a Ninja Warrior, but a little
I knew a guy who did
maybe?
an Ironman.
Oh yeah,
that is.
My father used to do that.
Correct me if I'm wrong here, guys. It is first. I think it's a swim.
It's 2-point-something miles swimming. I
think. And then you have to ride your bike for
100 miles.
100, and then you got to run a marathon.
But yeah, I think it's just shy of a marathon. But yeah, my bio dad used to do that. It was crazy. He was jacked. I was like, God.
Yeah,
dang.
when you do that, your cardiovascular is through the freaking roof.
Yeah, nuts. Hiking in the mountains is also fantastic for physical and mental health.
I just hiked in the mountains 2 weeks ago.
The mountains.
My wife and I took a long weekend with a couple of friends to go out to Denver, and then we went up to Silverthorne, which is in the mountains. And we hiked. And let me tell you what happened.
Okay.
So, first of all, I am up approximately 11,000 feet at that point. And then at 11,000 feet, 14,000 feet, there's 50% oxygen as sea level. 11,000 feet, it's probably a little bit more than half, probably 55, 60%. But my God, do you feel that? You completely feel the altitude. If you do any physical exertion, your body depletes its oxygen super quick, and then you're breathing really heavy. You're no stamina whatsoever. Yeah. So we're hiking, and we're trying to get to this lake. And, it's on a walked path, you know what I mean? And there's different terrain and going over water, and there's mud and there's rocks and there's all sorts of different stuff going on. So then we're 45 minutes in, and then we all at the same exact time notice, oh man, there's a storm front coming in.
Oh.
Yeah. Right? And immediately I click into okay, we're all going to die. We're gonna have all these events happen. You know what I mean? I start thinking of movies. You see people oh, we're having fun hiking. What? Oh my God! One of those deals. So here's what happened. It rained on us a little bit. No big deal. But the odd thing about when it rains in the mountains.
Yeah.
What do you think is odd about it?
That the water rushes down quickly, or you don't hear it.
You could, you could hear it when the rain hits the ground.
Maybe there's less trees. I don't know.
You realize when the rain hits you that it is ice cold.
Oh, that makes sense.
It hasn't gone through enough atmosphere to warm up.
That makes sense.
It's cold 30 feet above your head. You know what I mean? Or 100 feet above your head. You go up above the tree line, and the temperature drops dramatically.
Right.
So wow, holy Christ, it was really cold to get hit by that rain, and it was shocking. You feel every raindrop like it was an ice cube on your back for 3 seconds.
Oh, okay, that's no good.
Now we did another thing. We went up a cog train to Pikes Peak, 14,000 feet.
Whoa.
Now 11,000 feet was rough.
Yeah.
14,000 feet, 50% oxygen. I got winded going up 6 stairs. Now you would think that I would have enough oxygen in my system to balance that out where I don't even register it, but that's not the case.
Right.
Because what's happening is when you go into a higher altitude with lower oxygen, the only way for your body to quickly compensate is to increase your heart rate, which increases your blood flow, and that is the compensation. But you don't have as much blood in your system. You're on the edge. It takes days or into weeks for your hemoglobin to go up, which would help you absorb more oxygen, right? That's how people adjust. Their body creates more hemoglobin, which is inside your red blood cells, and that is able to connect to more oxygen. That's the sticky stuff that oxygen sticks to, I believe. So anyway, wow. It will humble you. You could be in excellent cardiovascular health. You can go up to altitude, and you are no longer, feel like you're in good cardiovascular health.
All right, let's move on to that discussion. There we go. So new cult unlocked. This one, I don't know. We'll see.
Cog train. What did I say wrong?
A cog train.
Did I say it wrong? It's a cog train. Do you want me to tell you what it is?
Isn't that what, like, should I say cog train?
I'll tell you what it is.
Oh, there's a question mark.
It's a train that's on rails. But in the middle of the rails, there is a rail that has teeth in it that a cog fits into, and the bottom of the train has cogs, and that's what propels the train. There's not that many of them in the United States, and the one I went on, I believe, is the longest one. And it's propelled by the cogs, so the train goes slow. It's a slow-moving train. Which novella is the fastest 1,000th show sprint? Question mark.
Are we going to do a sprint in the 1,000th show?
Yeah, I don't know. That's a good
It's a good
question.
We're doing some more planning, but maybe that's one.
Yeah, but so a cog train can go up super steep slopes. It just continues to just go up. Apparently they're safe, but they don't feel safe.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Just because they're so vertical. It's like a roller coaster.
Yeah.
Tick, 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 tick.
Yep, that's right.
Kind of thing. All right, let's check out this cult, if we want to call it that.
Okay.
Everything I own and love that not a single one of you knew that this was. I'm betting everything I own and love that not a single one of you knew that this was a thing. So if you go to Tokyo Disneyland, there's this one Baymax ride. And on this Baymax ride, there's about 6 songs that play. And each song is about 30 seconds each. So if you're waiting in line for a long time, there's a good chance you're going to hear all 6 of them. Well, while I'm in line, I noticed that there was this girl wearing Baymax-themed clothes that was just off to the side, dancing, and she knew all of the words and all of the choreography that the staff was doing to this ride. And I thought, wow, she must be a really big fan. But then I noticed there were more people joining in, and then there were even more people joining in, and they were hyped up, and they were here from the moment that the park was open till when it closed. When I looked online, I found out that this is a cult following that buys Disney tickets just to dance at this ride all day and nothing else at the park. And that's pretty awesome, so I joined them.
But you don't want to hear any of the music?
No, I probably copywritten, honestly.
What a weird thing to be interested in.
Yeah. I mean, Tokyo, they're living in the future. They're just living happy and free, I guess. I don't know, maybe.
I mean, it seems like a carefree life.
Yeah.
You have enough money to get into that park all the time, and you go over to this one ride, and you just, jam
hang
it
out all day.
Yeah. Yeah, that's not, COG, C-O-G.
Cod, yeah.
Not cod.
Not cod, not the game.
It's a train that is driven by the force of codfish.
Right.
And the guy says, is this why their population is declining?
In Tokyo, in Japan, I mean, maybe. I don't know. Maybe they meet true love at the Baymax ride.
Hey, where did you meet your spouse? I was dancing at the Baymax ride,
Mm-hmm.
and there's a cog train that drives right by there. Anyway, okay, this is,
Yeah. Par for the course for Japan. Yeah, that's true.
I mean, who am I to judge, Ian? You know,
that's true.
I don't
saying
choose to
it's
live
a
my
new
life.
cult.
Yeah, I don't like cults.
Right, but this one seems.
But and cult might not be the right term because they have a leader that is sexually exploiting.
That's people. Or that is like
money.
That is the litmus test.
Yeah.
But then let's go back to a real cult, or so to speak. So this is just kind of something that might be interesting as a discussion even is like when the lore is too crazy that they have to retcon it so it doesn't seem as crazy. So this one's specifically about Mormonism.
This video shows how I was taught Mormon prophet Joseph Smith translated the gold plates into what is now the Book of Mormon. You'll see he's holding the gold plates and he is reading it essentially like he's translating it, and then someone else is writing down the words he's saying in English. This is how I was taught how Mormon scripture, the Book of Mormon, was translated by Joseph Smith. Now that
So what do you I mean, it's kind of silly, but, a little bit because we know Mormonism, but it doesn't seem that far-fetched, right? I mean, just somebody reading off of a thing and translating it on the fly. It seems pretty straightforward. Let's see what she says.
we've seen the Mormon version of events. Let's look at how South Park says that this translation took place.
I have the golden plates here in this hat. I need to have them somewhere dark so I can read this spiritual light. And when I put the seer stones into the hat, the ancient letters light up.
As you can see, the gold plates are behind him in a cloth on the bed, and he is about to put his special rocks into a hat.
The ancient letters
Okay.
light up and change to English, which I can then read to you. Whoa!
Hey.
And he puts his face into the hat. Who do you think is
we're
right?
live.
The Mormon Church or the adult cartoon South Park?
Well, South Park.
You think South Park is right, Steve?
Yeah.
Do you know the kind of history of Joseph Smith and how he translated the Golden Tablets into English?
Yep.
Do you know what the Mormon Church teaches or what South Park claims to be true? Are you familiar with any of that?
I mean, I'm not an expert, but I'm fairly familiar with the standard story.
Let's just rewind it a little bit. So this is what she seems like a former Mormon.
I was
Yeah.
taught. Mormon prophet Joseph Smith translated the gold plates into what is now the Book of Mormon. You'll see he's holding the gold plates and he is reading it essentially like he's translating it. And then someone else is writing down the words he's saying in English.
So that's what the Mormon Church apparently taught her. Does that seem in par for the course for that religion to use, Steve, at all?
So, I mean, there are details in there that I think are disputed, but no one else saw the gold tablets. These are the key elements. He saw the gold tablets. He basically dictated to somebody else to write down, because I think he couldn't write, and that other person wrote it down. At some point, the translation was lost, and he had to retranslate the tablets. And when he did that, he paraphrased. Like, it wasn't an exact retranslation of what was said previously, almost as if he was making it up as he was going along.
Yeah.
And then he returned the tablet somewhere, never to be seen again.
Of course.
So there's no actual historical evidence that these tablets actually existed, except for the Smith's claim and the alleged translations, which didn't quite match.
Yes. Then let's look at this. So this is South Park's reenactment,
Yeah.
so to speak.
I have the golden plates here in this hat. I need to have them somewhere dark so I can read this spiritual light. And when I put the seer stones into the hat, the ancient letters light up.
As you can see, the gold plates are behind him in a cloth on the bed, and he is about to put his special rocks into a hat.
The ancient letters light up and change to English, which I can then read to you. Whoa!
But
And
the
he
actual
So-
the gold things are behind him in a cloth.
Well, yeah, I think in the show, I think they said it was actually in the hat, but I think is what he kind of alluded
Okay.
to. But she's saying that they're behind him. So I mean, it could have been like he was lying, which Well, let's
His
see what
face
happens. What
into
she
the
says.
hat. Who do you think is right? The Mormon Church or the adult cartoon South Park? The reality is Joseph Smith had a special rock.
Oop, I had it freeze. TikTok, perfect
rock.
timing. Let me refresh.
Special rock.
Special rock. Okay, so he had a special rock. So it seems like South Park is correct in that tale. Let me just jump back to it. Of course, TikTok dies right when we're getting to the good part. TikTok, why do you hate me? Anyway, the point of the matter was this: like when certain founding myths and stories get retconned because modernity has taught us that it's so wacky. It's like, is that because of the forces of modernity forcing people to weasel
Of course,
into
it makes
science
perfect
or
sense.
something?
This is
or-
why Scientology very slowly indoctrinates people, and they don't come out swinging with the full story, because it's poorly written. It's not compelling. It's absurd, and you have to already have drank a lot of Kool-Aid in order to get to that level where you can hear the truth. But it sounds to me like she's saying that they never hear the truth.
like the Mormon followers don't ever get that story specifically. I mean, unless they read the Book of Mormon, presumably it's actually in there, right? Or is it in the Book of Mormon, his finding of the golden tablets? Any Mormons in the chat now? Oh, thank you for the
Somebody said so.
donation.
Yeah, actually, thank you for the donation. Really appreciate it. Somebody said, to be clear, the LDS Church is now attempting to correct the record to be more in line with actual history. They're pretending that the seer stone and hat method has been known all along, but it wasn't. Okay, that makes sense.
Right. I mean, it was also another
This video
send-off
shows how
of-
I was
I'm sorry.
taught
the whole
Mormon
thing
prophet
was,
Joseph Smith
the Book of Mormon
translated.
play. which, again, it tells the same basic story of that. It all superficially seems like a con job, right? There's no, it's a magic trick. There's no actual evidence presented. It's all just someone's showmanship, and the way that they sort of blow it off is like, or they intimate that the Mormons sort of blow that off by saying, well, that's the way God does things. You have to be a little bit mysterious, a little bit ambiguous, otherwise you don't need faith, right? If you could prove it, you wouldn't need faith. But of course, that also would be true if it was all made up malarkey. Right?
It's exactly the same.
Yeah.
Why would an all-powerful God need us to believe in it and to have faith in order to believe in it?
Yeah.
Like
Right.
if God existed and God was good and God wanted us to be good and treat each other well, then what's the point? God either wants us to know he's there and proves it and then just says, here, let me teach you how to be good.
Right.
Or God doesn't give a crap.
Right.
But the mysteriousness of it is the explanation for the lack of God, right? That's basically what it is in a nutshell.
It's the ambiguity is the phenomenon, as is often the case with pseudoscience. Like we said, like the ambiguity of UFO photographs is the phenomenon, right?
Yeah.
Like if they were unambiguous, they wouldn't be UFOs. They would be something else, right? Something would be a plane or something that we could identify. Blob squatch, it only exists in fuzzy photos, right? It's the same thing as like, religion is always this mystery that you have to have faith in because it cannot be proven historically, scientifically, factually. Although they try to, often believers try to have it both ways. They'll say, but there is proof of the Bible. But then when you drill down and say, well, no, that isn't proof, they go, well, it's all, you have to have faith,
Yeah.
So you can't have it both ways. And you're right. I mean, it certainly all seems like human manufactured superstition, when you look at it, especially when you do comparative religions and you look at the history of belief and how they've evolved over time. It sort of follows the pattern of evolving culture, not any kind of out of the blue kind of revelation, and not anything that could not be explained as just this is just what people believe, based upon culture,
And the idea of the idea of God that only makes a modicum of sense is the deist concept, which is that God created everything and then just backed off and doesn't interact. And again, then why do we need a God to, right? Like, yes, we don't know exactly what happened at the instant the universe was created. We don't know what created that event happening.
Well, it just becomes, the deism just becomes irrelevant, at that point. Yeah. But if you want to believe that there's some entity out there that doesn't reveal himself in any way or have any impact on the laws of physics or the way the universe operates today, okay. But it doesn't have any effect on anything.
Yeah. But he loves you, Steve. He loves you. How can you reject love?
Well, yeah, it's that is a projection. I mean, it's such a transparent projection of human emotions onto the universe.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? And like, oh yeah, there's this father figure in the sky who loves us and wants us to be good. I mean, it's almost like what the kind of things parents make up to tell their kids to be good, But we could say a few things. When we took this from a science, I mean, there's a sociological approach, a historical approach to mythology and religion. But you could also, what we do is take basically a scientific approach and say, well, what do we know to be true? What can we verify as factually, empirically true? And the supernatural just doesn't enter into it. This is where epistemology comes in. It's like, how could you know about the supernatural? The bottom line is you can't. Because by definition, it's outside any reproducible, observable rules. If it was following any kind of rule-based cause and effect, it's natural. It's not supernatural by definition. So
I've had people say to me, like, "Why do you hate God?" And it's like, like, come on, it's such a simplified way to wave your hand over. I don't hate God.
I don't think he exists.
I don't think gods exist.
Yeah.
Because of the lack of proof. I would love if there was a loving, all-caring God that is creating an eternal afterlife for. I mean, of course, who wouldn't? Who wouldn't? As long as it wasn't weird. You know what I mean? As long as it wasn't like 70 virgins on my own planet, that to me is very strange. But that's strange to me because I'm culturally not there.
Right.
But if I was dead and in heaven, I'd still want to be with my friends and family. I don't need 70 virgins.
Well, it's just, I think speculating about what an afterlife would be like is so pointless.
It's pointless.
Because either it doesn't exist, or I think if it does exist, it must be so, like, we wouldn't be biological brains at that point.
Yeah.
We would be something else entirely.
Be spiritual.
Trying to imagine what that's like is pointless. It's just, the only thing you could say is that it's a transcendent, completely different experience that you have no way of imagining what it would be like. And you know what I mean? Like any kind of notion of physical wants or needs or whatever, it just doesn't seem to translate. It doesn't make any sense. Again, it seems like the kind of mythology a sheep herder from 2,000 years ago would make up.
Exactly.
You know what I mean?
Exactly,
Not any kind of more sophisticated philosophy of what how the universe might operate. So I don't know. I think the best thing to do is to study religion and belief systems from an historical and philosophical, scholarly point of view, and it kind of demystifies all of it.
It does.
Right? Because it's so obviously human mythology when you strip it down.
If you read the Old Testament, the Old Testament attributes God with some blazingly effed up stuff.
Well,
Like
God
believing-
is a very human, megalomaniacal asshole in the Old Testament.
Yeah. I mean, if
you take it literally.
Yeah, if you take
right?
it literally, then slavery is on the table. Beating your wife is on the table. Beating your slaves is on the table. All of the
selling your daughters into slavery.
man's inhumanity to man is all over the Old Testament. And when you
And not only that, so there's lots of little gems in there, like these kids were making fun of one of God's prophets. So he sends two she-bears. Yeah, the Baldy. Called them Baldy. So God, his reaction to kids calling one of his prophets Baldy was to send two bears to maul and kill them. Okay,
They had it coming.
Seriously. I mean, yeah.
I mean, yeah.
those freaking kids.
How could you dare say something
Yeah.
against the follicular
Yeah.
leave?
But he loves you.
Challenge.
But he loves you.
Yeah,
I mean,
just don't call his prophet Baldy, and then he'll have you mauled to death by bears.
And then when you talk to people who are defending Christianity, they're like, "Oh, but that's the Old Testament. Everything changed with the New
God
Testament."
changed in the Old Testament, from the Old Testament to the New Testament?
Yes.
God himself
Yes.
changed?
Yes.
God's woke
Yeah,
now.
a new covenant
He's
was
held.
established, Steve. There was a
Woke.
new covenant, and that covenant was Jesus.
But it still makes no sense that, but still doesn't change the fact that the Old Testament God is a wrathful piece, kind of jerk.
Yeah. God does not want people to have anal sex.
Yeah, apparently.
He
He
really
cares about
doesn't.
things like that. That's the other thing is that or eat scavengers or whatever, animals with cloven hooves. Why would God care about things at that human micromanagement level? It just doesn't seem to fit.
I know, like
He's an all-powerful, trans-dimensional being of the multiverse who doesn't want you to eat animals with a cloven hoof.
Yeah.
It makes absolutely no sense.
Well, it was said perfectly in the Devil's Advocate movie. Like taste, but don't swallow. He's like saying he's always like saying you could do this, but you can't do that. It's okay to chew this delicious food, but you can't swallow it. It's okay to swallow it, but you can't digest it. It's like it's a very strange relationship to reality. And in that movie, what Satan says, by Al Pacino, by the way,
Yeah.
his best, I think one of his best roles. One of the best moments in film was that scene right there that he had, where he just says, I can't worship that. I can't follow those rules and be inside that paradigm. It's absurd.
Yeah.
And I'm not doing
Yeah.
it. And you're like,
There are a lot of devil figures in literature and in movies and whatnot, which are very compelling because if you portray Satan, Lucifer, as a rational being, he has a lot of material to work with. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
It is very easy
Yeah.
to say, like, the whole Christian mythology is kind of this fanatical, nonsensical, thing. Maybe, I think there's, at the core of Christian philosophy is actually Greek Enlightenment, which is what it
Yeah.
developed from. It
Definitely.
was inspired by. It really is Greek, Enlightenment, and that's like the whole like be good to each other and turn the other cheek. That's fine. That's all good. That's all just basic sort of ethics kind of thing. But then it gets wrapped up in the don't eat fish on Friday and keep holy the Sabbath and all this nonsensical mythology.
Don't
stuff.
wear too close fabrics because that's
And
cringe.
yeah,
But the idea here, Steve, that
Yeah.
an omniscient, omnipotent
Yeah.
being, right? Let's just let that sink in for a second. All-knowing, all-powerful,
Right.
knows everything, past, present, future, can do anything, past, present, future. Sets up all of these weird things that happen.
Yeah.
Decides at one point, I'm going to send a piece of myself down.
Yeah.
Because Christ is God. There's the Holy Trinity,
Yeah.
and you can't, and the secret ghost, whatever,
yes.
the Booberry.
secret
I call him
ghost.
Booberry. Call him Booberry. But they're all God.
Right.
I'm going to send a part of myself down to earth, sacrifice myself, create a blood cult, and then everything is going to be different. Why? Why didn't you just start that way? Why would all that rigmarole have to happen?
Right.
It does. Why are we doing this? It just doesn't. None of it. It doesn't make sense. It's what the thing about religions that is magnificent is the stories, the mythology, and the humanity that is built into them. Right. If you look at Joseph Campbell's Hero with a Thousand Faces, one of the best freaking studies on humanity ever. And you look at all that aggregate information as human history just from the storytelling ideas,
Right.
Because you can learn a lot about humanity from
Sure.
what people thought about humanity thousands of years ago. It's really fascinating. There, it has extreme value from a philosophical
Oh, yeah.
standpoint. But the problem is, and this is the thing, when you become a skeptic, when you get to a certain point in your skeptical training, and you look back. And you're like, I used to believe in religion when I was a kid. I used to believe in UFOs when I was a kid. I used to believe in Bigfoot. I believed in everything, when I was young, and it was fun. But when you what do you call this? Scales drop? Is that the correct
Yeah.
phrase? When all that just drops away, and you're an intellect. You have an intellect that's powerful and is there with you at all times. It seems so utterly absurd, and this is why, to be very frank with everyone, why Trump seems so crazy to skeptics. Because it's so obvious that he's a con man. It's so obvious that he's lying because he lies and you could catch him in his lies.
Right.
And this is the problem that we have with the absurdity of the modern world today, because you have people walking around who are pushing their religion super hard. You have people walking around that are backing politicians who are clearly full of it. And as a skeptic, you're like, oh my God, I'm light years ahead of these people, and it's painful to think that we have to cohabitate with people that think that way in the world. And this is what we teach in skepticism: is you have to be okay with that. You fight against their thoughts and not against the people, right? You fight against their ideas and not against the people themselves. And I am doing this every day. I'm trying, and this goes for religion and everything, right? Try to bring this back full circle. I am trying, and I'm doing, I think, an okay job of training myself to remove. I don't personally attack people, and I haven't done that, and I don't do that. I am thinking it, and I'm trying not to think it. I'm being honest. I think about it. I want to call people a-hole and stupid and idiot and moron and all those terms.
That doesn't get you anywhere.
It doesn't. But all I do is I respond to what they say and what their beliefs are, and I'll debate that. And that's really a good place to get to from a critical thinking perspective, because once you get there, the noise level kind of goes down, and you detune, and you don't get as angry, and you don't lose sleep anymore, and you're just really attacking their thoughts and that. So I think that's a good place to be, and we should treat religion the same way. Like, try not to be mean to the people, be mean to their ideas.
Yeah. Well, I mean, I think the best approach, the one that we've explicitly taken on the SGU, is to be nurturing, right? Like, it doesn't get you anywhere to blame and shame people, or to call them names, as you say, or put them down. It doesn't accomplish anything. What does help is trying to be positive, giving people critical thinking skills, giving them information, giving them perspective, encouraging them to challenge what they believe, to think more deeply about what they believe, to make them feel good about challenging what they believe. Not to make, if you ridicule their beliefs, they're just going to cling to them all the harder.
Yeah.
And they're going to, you're just locking them into, because now you're making it into a tribal thing,
But we all know that people tend to be immune to opposing information, no matter how it's delivered.
Well, it depends on the context.
Yeah, there's strategies
Depends on
that
the
you could use,
context.
and there's contextually it's meaningful as well. But for the most part, right? And if we just go from politics, I've tried everything. With all different kinds of people, and you're not going to be changing minds left and right. Don't even waste your time. Who you are talking to is the other people who are reading
Who might be listening.
who are watching and listening and not really involved. And that's typically who my audience is, even on Facebook.
Well, certainly you're not going to, if somebody believes something because their culture believes it, their tribe believes it, it's part of their identity, it's part of their worldview, it is the information ecosystem in which they're living. You are not going to just say, you're wrong, here's information, and they're going to go, oh, okay, I'll give up my entire community and identity now because you told me I'm wrong. That's not going to happen.
No.
But that doesn't mean you can't slowly give them critical thinking skills, and then they may
might
be
come
able
around.
to apply it. And again, we've had conversations, emails, interactions with people over the last 20 years where they said I was a creationist, I was a true believer, I was in a cult, I believed this or that, and then over time, just by talking about like UFOs or something completely unrelated to my belief system, I sort of learned how to think about my own thinking, and eventually they get out of that belief system.
Yes, yeah, it's possible.
Which is why, sometimes we often get pushback against, because the SGU is a scientific skeptical podcast, right? We do scientific skepticism. Not that we don't touch on political or religious issues, we do when there's a scientific angle to them. But we're not like an atheist or a humanist show, and we're not a overtly political or partisan show. We are a scientific and critical thinking show. But oftentimes, over the years, we've had many humanist atheists say, "You guys should need to attack religion more. Why are you giving them a pass? They're just like any other pseudoscience," which kind of misses the point. It's we don't give them a pass. We just talk about it as a scientific issue, a logical issue.
It's structured.
And we don't want to ridicule, take an eye rolling, oh my God, this is so ridiculous kind of approach to it, because it doesn't get us anywhere. And the whole point is we're trying to give people critical thinking skills, and you can't do that if you immediately put them off and make them defensive. So, in fact, when we talk about things like Bigfoot or UFOs, that has been criticized within the skeptical movement as Bigfoot skepticism, right? It's why are you wasting your time on Bigfoot skepticism? That's low-hanging fruit. It's not important. You should be addressing only the issues that I deem to be important, and then here they are. It's but it's the Bigfoot skepticism is how we get to people who then need to apply those skills to the more the issues that are more important, that are more part of their identity, right? That's the back door into critical thinking, is through these fun cultural beliefs that are superficial or whatever, or meaningless.
That someone might not really care to get
That
to be
they're not
corrected.
going to get as defensive about. It's oh, Bigfoot doesn't exist. I could live with that without that radically altering my, my worldview. Right, but you're not going to tell them, oh, the religion that you were raised in is wrong. What's the point? Are you going to get anywhere with that? I mean, again, there's pretty objective evidence that says the answer to that question is no.
Yeah.
It's not going to get you anywhere. But again, it depends on what, I'm not pushing back. I'm not telling atheist outlets not to do what they're doing. They could do whatever they want to do, and that's fine. And there is absolutely a role for every point of view to be advocated and to point that out. It's just what's your purpose? Is your purpose to be a firebrand for atheism? Good for you. We need that in the culture. That needs to be part of the conversation. Our approach is educational. And if you take an educational approach, you can't be a firebrand for one point of view.
Yeah.
You have to take this kind of more of a nurturing approach.
I mean, we'll be a little bit more gloves off here. In the live streams and things like that, even still, our editorial policy is still in place here, but just not as much. I won't blatantly come out and talk about Trump on the podcast, because if there are Republicans listening who, follow Trump, I don't want to say believe because that's too on the nose, but they follow Trump, Again, we want them to have the critical thinking skills. We want to be pushing that out there and have it be have them accept it, and then maybe they'll apply
and everywhere across the political spectrum.
Yeah.
I think, first of all, we're all biased. Everyone is biased. Everyone is biased because you have a worldview.
Mm-hmm.
You have, there are things that you think, even if you don't explicitly understand this, about how society works, how people function, how the world works. And it's the ones that you don't know about that are the most pernicious, right?
Yeah.
Because you're not even aware of all these filters, these perceptual filters, these thought filters that we have in place. The only way to really become aware of them is to talk with people who don't have them,
Yep.
right? Which is why it's so important, or they have different filters or a different worldview, whatever.
We all come cooked with privileges too.
Yes.
It's hard I think it's hard for people in general to perceive the privileges that they have out of the box.
Sometimes those privileges are things you don't have to think about.
Yeah,
And so it's very hard to be aware of things you don't have to think about,
that's right.
by definition. Again, you only know about it by interacting with people who don't have the same privilege.
The only tenable position is to say, yep, I have biases, right? Like I'll give you an example of me, right? I was born in the late 60s. I grew up in the 70s, right? I was a young kid in the 70s, and reality imprinted on me in the 70s. And as I got deeper into critical thinking and as I get older, I realized just how powerful that imprinting was. It was super powerful, and I didn't even know it. I was indoctrinated into all sorts of things that I didn't even know.
Yeah.
And to dissuade myself of those things has been difficult. And I won't say specifically, but we were coming up with a new bit for the SGU and for the extravaganza. And George and I, in the heat of the moment, came up with a really funny title for the game. And then when we presented it to everyone, we realized that, oh my God, this was bad. It was just, it was a fun title.
It's in poor taste.
But Kara pointed out, she's like, yeah, but that's not cool because that's funny for you guys because you're guys and you're older and you have a different worldview.
Yeah.
But for younger people, they'll see it this way. And Bob picked up on it early too. Bob was like, I don't know about that. I'm like, no, it's cool. Everyone will like it. It's funny. But it doesn't matter. It's the lesson I learned was that my gut is wrong. My gut can be wrong many times. I have to check myself, self-correct, talk to other people, be open to new ideas, be open to other people's perceptions of reality and let them bleed into my own. So I have a more, what would you call it, like a more managed, modern position on things.
Cosmopolitan.
Yeah, it'd be cosmopolitan.
If you want to know the title, come to the 1000th show in Chicago,
That's true.
Illinois, and the extravaganza.
Yes, that's right.
Tickets
We're
are
not
now
saying
available.
you'll find out there, but do come.
But do come.
Anybody that pays for a ticket to that show, if you come up and ask me, I'll tell you what the name of that
No, you
bit
won't.
was.
No, we
Yeah, whatever,
we have a
it's
gag
funny.
order. No, I know. It's
That's
fine.
totally fine.
It's not that.
It's a
not
perfect example.
that terrible, but it's
Ian, isn't it though? Isn't it the perfect example of what we're talking about?
Sure,
though?
yeah.
We're laughing, we're funny, and it turns out like it could be insulting
it's
to a lot
kind
of
of
people.
in the gray zone.
yeah. It's like if this show was a little more on that edge, it would be probably okay. But
All
it's
right,
it's
here's
cookie cutter.
an
Anyway,
example.
Here's
another
Here we go,
example.
Steve. Shoot, hit me with it.
Uh-oh.
For the
Say it, man. I'm listening.
the show we did last fall. What did we call it?
Nauticon?
The Nauticon.
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 Yes.
What was the subtitle of the Nauticon?
Come naked, come often.
It what?
No.
What it was?
What?
I forgot.
No, it
A
wasn't.
meat space meetup.
Oh,
The
right.
Meat Space
Meat Space
Meetup,
Meetup.
Some people thought that meat space was a creepy word,
Yeah. Oh my God. Yeah, I remember that.
right? Because now, of course, we meant meat space. We come from a totally different cultural perspective on it, and to
Like
us,
IRL.
it didn't even occur to us that it could be interpreted.
I still don't get it. Meat space was somebody came up with it. It has a very specific meaning.
Yes.
And to my perception, culturally, everyone got it. Meat space means in real life. You're seeing each other in physicality.
It is a cyberpunk term.
Yeah.
Right. It's meat space as opposed to cyberspace.
Yeah.
Right. So we get that.
Yeah.
But we talked with people who had no idea that that's what it meant.
What do they think it meant?
They thought it was like a meat market, like where you a place to hook up, or at least it had that
Oh
vibe.
my God. Let me say something
like
about
several
this. If
layers
you
deep.
come to Nauticon to hook up,
Good luck.
if that's your I'm going to
No,
Nauticon to
that's-
hook up.
The point was, if that's what it sounds like, meat
I got it,
space.
I know.
That sounds like what?
No
what,
offense to the
what
people.
are
I
you
got it.
saying there? Because they didn't know the reference, and we were shocked that they didn't. I mean,
Oh my
how
God.
have you lived for the last 20 years with virtual space and Zoom.
Yeah, and how'd you not hear that?
I use that term all the time. We're going to meet in meet space as opposed to online, right? It's just a part of the vernacular now.
IRL is like the new thing, but that's also comes from streaming, and gaming and all that kind of stuff.
Right. This is just, but that was a cultural thing.
Yeah,
but absent our cultural reference, they were struggling to interpret what we meant by meat space, and the closest analog they had was meat market, and that's how they interpreted it.
Yeah. Okay.
Yeah.
Okay. And then, what happens is, I don't know how old everyone is out there, but like as you get older, right?
Yeah.
It slowly creeps up on you. You find that, you slowly change and you like realize that like whatever that 10 to 15 years is that you were a kid and that the imprinting that it does on you, you start to realize that the rest of the world doesn't look at the world like you do anymore. Uh-huh. And it's painful. It's painful because you are outdated and you have to update your thinking and you have to allow yourself to change. It's hard. It's hard. I remember the first time I heard the word trans and I was like, what is that? What is that? What could that transsexual? What could that possibly mean? I remember being like so weirded out by it. And then when you do the research and you do the, you get down to the human level and you try to understand what people who are trans, what their lives are like, what they're going through, what the reality is. The fact that half the population in the United States wants them to go away.
Yeah.
That is, when you do the human
I don't
thing.
know if half. That seems like a lot.
All right, let's say
whatever.
Let's say 2/3.
At least they're a little like flippant with.
But when you
existence.
do that, that's the thing that works for me. That's how I get. That's how I change myself. I have to humanize it. I have to put myself in their position, whatever it is. And
well, there's been many ideas that we grew up with, and then when you first hear it, you're like, "That's bullshit."
Yeah. Yep.
That sounds like I never use this term unironically, but what some people say, that's woke nonsense, right? So the first time I heard the claim that race does not exist, I'm like, come on, that sounds like political correctness gone crazy.
Yeah.
But you have to back up and say, okay, but let me find out what people are actually saying.
Yeah. What is the intent there with that statement? What are they saying?
Well, the idea is that if you look at it from a population genetics point of view, what we think of as the 5 races, or however you want to divvy it up, then that does not correspond in any meaningful way to population genetics. It's really it's really a cultural idea.
Yeah, it's a thought. It's not a reality,
and it's based mainly on very superficial attributes like skin color, but doesn't really reflect genetic reality. And in fact, not that the human race is not 100% homogeneous. There are genetic subpopulations and different frequencies, but we're very outbred. As a species, we're very outbred, which means that there's way more genetic overlap than there is differences.
Yeah.
But yes, you could make statistical statements about the gene frequencies in different subpopulations. Again, with a lot of cross fertilization there. But the big thing is that if you looked at a genetic map of humanity, it has almost no relationship to
the races
as people think of them.
Yeah.
First of all, something like 95% of genetic diversity exists among Africans. And everyone else is like the other 5% of human genetic diversity.
Interesting.
So essentially, what you would have is, I think this is the way, if you just looked at the genetic map, you go, okay, so there's 4 races. There's 3 in Africa and 1 outside of Africa.
And we're all outside of Africa, yeah.
Or there's 3, like whatever you want to call that level of subdivision. Then there's deeper levels of subdivisions of subpopulations you could make from there. But the first level division you would make would be like 3 Africa, like northern, central, southern Africa, and outside of Africa. You know what I mean?
You know what I love about science and my relationship with science? Like when I first learned what you just said, right? Because it was a moment. Most
it's counterintuitive.
It's counterintuitive, but we were taught there's different races, and it just becomes like it becomes a construct in your head. With my love for science and respect for science, like I read about it, and I do that, and I can immediately adopt it. I can go, okay, the science says this. That's it. That's fine, and I will change my thinking. I can change my emotional thinking much easier when science is there to be like, no, this is what reality is. Yeah, that's a very powerful thing you just said. Like, there's diversity in the black population that dwarfs. It's 95% of the diversity.
That's where most of our evolution occurred in Africa.
I know. So, but it works. Once you respect science on that level, it really gives you like it's like, here, just go with science, and you'll be up to date on things, and you'll be thinking more.
So someone in the chat says that race is a spectrum, but gender isn't. So my question for you is, how would you gender somebody who has XY chromosomes, has testicles and sperm, but completely female external genitalia? How would you gender them?
Are we going to wait for a response?
Sure.
We don't have to.
Should I play Jeopardy music? Blue-doo,
yeah, so just think about that. Or how would you gender somebody who is XX but has very masculinized, ambiguous genitalia and masculine secondary sexual characteristics? How would you gender them?
It's almost like we don't look at their genitals or
saying an exception
chromosomes.
doesn't cut it. When you say, quote unquote, an exception, you're saying I'm arbitrarily excluding some of the data by labeling it an exception. It's not an exception, it's data. And not only that, it's people. Right? So gender, biological sex is absolutely a spectrum, because there's 1% in the middle, whatever the percentage is, depends on how you define it, where you draw the line. At the low end, it's like 0.1%. At the high end, it's 2%. It's somewhere in there. But even if you take the low end of like the 0.1%, that's still hundreds of millions of people, right, worldwide, or millions of people, worldwide. That's a lot of people, and that is part of biology. All of biology is a spectrum. All right. This is biological sex is not some magical exception to biology, which in every other way is always some kind of spectrum, some kind of bell curve or whatever. Sexual development, biological sexual development, is a complicated thing that happens. It has many factors. It has the sex chromosome genes. It has extra sex chromosome genes, hormonal levels, receptors, receptor sensitivity, the environment of the womb. And all of these things influence biological sexual development. And it's really complicated. To think that this results in some strictly binary outcome is kind of absurd.
Yeah, it's crazy.
There's a lot of overlap in the middle there, and you can't just dismiss that as an exception. That is a no true Scotsman logical fallacy, right? That no true Scotsman is, well, everything, like every Scotsman knows how to play the bagpipes. Well, I'm a Scotsman and I don't know how to play the bagpipes. Well, you're no true Scotsman,
Steve, he makes he has an interesting question here that he said, I don't disagree, but that's what exceptions mean, a deviation from norm, isn't it?
No, but see, norm is the wrong concept there. We don't even, in medicine, in biology, we don't really talk about normal and abnormal. You could talk about typical and atypical because that's just basically a statistical observation. So you could say what a typical male development is and a typical female development, and there may be atypical developments, but it's not abnormal. It's part of the biological diversity. Here's another way to look at this. New species arise all the time, right? Every speciation event is some subset of a population who is abnormal, right, or atypical, but that then becomes the new typical for this new subpopulation or this new species eventually. Yet another way to look at it is we are all mutants. What's a normal genetic profile? There isn't one. We're all mutants, all of us. We're just variation. It's just human variation. So that's another one of those subtle things, like when you first hear, oh, you shouldn't call like people with autism abnormal. They're atypical, right? And we talk about neurotypical. Like there are people who are neurotypical and there are people who are not neurotypical. Again, it sounds like political correctness, but it really isn't. It's just a more accurate, more neutral way of scientifically describing what's going on. It's an attempt at describing reality devoid of value judgments, right? You're trying to remove the value judgments from the description. Now, this is one of those things that transformations that's happened in science over the last 100 years. 100 years ago, science was totally value laden. It was culturally laden. Is all of our thinking about about people and everything else was all colored massively by our own cultural biases, and the last 100 years has seen an attempt at weeding out these biases from our scientific.
You agree
of
with
reality.
Team Magneto then?
Yes, I'm totally.
Yeah,
Team
no,
Magneto.
I think I can't help but put myself into the human position here. You're a teenager. Let's say you're male gender, right? You have male genitalia.
Yeah.
But you completely relate to being a female. You think of yourself as a female. You have no control over this. This is just what you were born with. You think of yourself as a female. You relate to the female biology.
Yeah.
Your sexual orientation could be that you're attracted to men, but you're a man. And then culturally, you feel this cultural pressure and religious pressure to not be those things. So you have this mindset like, I'm damaged, I'm wrong, I'm totally screwed up. Nobody understands. Nobody could possibly understand. When you put yourself in that position and you realize like the people are living like this, and the things that we say, right? Not when I say we, I don't mean the SGU, but I mean just people who are in the more typical spectrum who don't worry about this kind of stuff, never have to think about it. Those people could live and die by what we say, by the way we react, by the comments that we make, by the way that we look at them, by what we say. Sometimes they get beat up just for thinking differently. And I'm very happy that today, like, things are starting to shift, because even though it's a small part of the population, Steve said it, and it's so important to do this. These are people. These are freaking people that have these issues.
That of course is true. But even if you're just looking at it from a cold scientific point of view, you have to ask yourself certain basic questions. Someone asked about Jerry Coyne. Jerry Coyne does disagree with what I'm saying. He thinks that biological sex is strictly binary.
Who's Jerry Coyne?
His basic argument, he's an evolutionary biologist who has a blog. He's going to be at SciCon. He'll be giving a talk about this, and I will be rebutting him if you're interested.
Oh!
But he says because gametes, right? Because sperm and eggs are binary, and therefore biological sex is binary, because it's all about the gametes.
It's all about reproduction, it seems like, right?
Which is, I think boiling biological sex down to gametes,
it's not.
It's a choice. I guess you could make that choice, but is that choice objectively better than any other choice? Are you saying that whether you have a penis or a vagina is not part of biological sex? It should not be part of our definition of biological sex? That seems to be the extreme view, in my opinion.
What Magneto would do, Steve, is he would make those people, the next day they wake up, and they would be the 1%.
Yeah.
So this guy would wake up and he'd be like, hey, I identify as a man, but I have female genitalia. And then that guy would be living the nightmare and realize, wow, I got to start thinking about this differently and treat people with respect.
So,
because I think he's being disrespectful. Do you want me to punch him when we go to SciCon?
No.
Again,
just kidding.
I don't even want to get into that level.
I'm just kidding.
It's all about how you decide to categorize things. And you could ask the question, why are we even bothering to categorize it? Which has different context. But in any case, I think the real question comes down to, let me get to my point.
Shut up.
Sorry.
Do you think the brain is a biological organ?
It is.
Do you think the brain develops differently under the influence of different sexual genetics and hormones?
Absolutely
it does.
Yeah.
Right? So there are things that you can predict about the brain's behavior and development based upon your, the biological influences, sexual biological influences, whether you're a genetic male or female,
Sorry,
what the hormones you have during development, et cetera, et cetera. And like that, the most obvious one is sexual orientation, right? If you're a typical male whose brain evolved under the influence of testosterone, the chances are pretty high that you will respond to female erotic stimuli, right? Yeah. And we could measure that scientifically. That's not random. You know what I mean? It's the brain develops is part of biological sex. So who's to say whether your brain is a more important predictor of your quote unquote biological sex than your penis is?
Yeah.
That's just a choice that we would make when we're categorizing things. You know, we would say, you know, and here's the whole point. You know what the word trans means, right?
I think I do. I hope I do.
Well, the word, I mean, it wasn't made up for this, right? It exists in science in many, many contexts. There's cis and trans, right?
Yeah.
Cis means that basically everything's on the same side, and trans means that things are on different sides.
Right.
Right? If you're cislunar, you're between the Earth and the Moon. If you're translunars, you're on the other side of the Moon.
Right.
If you have a protein that is cis, like all the hydrogens on one side, and if it's trans, it's on different side, the bonds or whatever are on different sides.
We got it.
Or transgenic.
Right?
Yes, you're
So
right.
if you take all of the typical male traits and all the typical female traits, if they're all on one side, you're cis.
Exactly.
If they're on different sides, you have some, like, right, you have the XY, but you have a female genitalia, you're trans, right? Or intersex is a term used, but trans, I think, fits more generically. So the question that becomes, does the brain count on that list? Of course it does. And let me ask you another question. If I took your brain out,
Yep.
and let's say this were possible,
And not much would change.
how would we know?
How would we know?
and it was transplanted into a typical female body.
Yes.
Right? Would you think of yourself, I guess I'm a woman now, or would you think of yourself as a man in a woman's body?
I mean, I would like to think I would adapt.
That's an interesting.
I would be me
Isn't
in
there
a
a
woman's
movie
body. I'd
about
be
that?
a man in a woman's body.
Right. So you're saying that your gender is your brain.
Well, in that instance, I would say no.
Or would you, or somebody,
I'm both at that point.
you're trans at that
I'm
point.
trans,
But
yeah.
I'm saying, but think about it though. Think about how you would think about yourself,
Yeah.
right? You know, I think it's way more accurate.
You know the guy that
just-
plays Thor?
Yeah.
I'd have sex with him.
Yeah. Okay. That's
Alright,
a
good for you.
totally.
That's what I would
Yeah, I'm
like.
not sure that was part of the. Not a topic
my
on the
point,
list.
if you think about it that way, I mean, again, maybe I'm a little bit biased because I'm a neurologist, but I
Wait,
think,
you wouldn't have sex with him?
I think that gender identity is probably more of a brain phenomenon than it is a penis phenomenon,
Yeah.
or whatever,
Yeah,
a
makes
genitalia
sense.
phenomenon.
Yeah, because that's what you're thinking.
That's
what
how
you're
you
feeling.
think
yeah.
and feel
Yeah.
and whatever, and conceptualize yourself and the world and all that. So, you know, the idea that people who identify as one gender while they have the, you know, the external genitalia or internal genitalia of another, that they're somehow delusional or whatever, that they're wrong, that it's got to be a social contagion or whatever, is nonsense. That's just it's just neurologically naive, right? It
Just to
makes no
clarify,
sense.
Steve is not debating
Oh,
Mr.
yeah,
Coyne.
it's two different.
Yeah, Coyne is giving a lecture, and Steve's going to give a lecture. I don't think that Coyne knows that you're doing it.
I don't know.
But I want to
Until they
remind
bomb rush
people.
the stage.
I want to remind people that
This is respectful.
Yeah, this
It's
is
a
how
healthy
science
discussion.
works.
It's a
Yes,
healthy
this is how
discussion.
science works. It's good that they have oppositional opinions. It's good that they're
Well, the
presenting
talk
them
I'm
to
giving
people.
is things about which skeptics disagree. That's the talk.
Yeah.
And I'm going to be talking about a lot of things, not just this.
Yeah.
We talk about nuclear power and GMOs and global warming and things where historically, you know, skeptics have found themselves on opposite sides of the question and
Yeah.
why.
Yeah.
Why does that happen? And then we'll also be talking about biological sex. Because that currently, I think that's the one issue about which we disagree the most. There's the most intra-skeptical disagreement because there's value judgments that people are not explicitly stating that they are making.
But I like what you said, Steve, about the brain. You push it, you know, like if you have everybody play that mind experiment,
Yeah.
it's powerful because you are now confronted with a scenario that puts you at odds with yourself. Like
Yes.
it's like immediately like, oh, that's what that's what it's like,
Yeah.
right?
I certainly don't
Yeah.
think my sexual orientation would change.
Yeah.
You know? But anyway,
I'd make it work though. I would make it work. That's all I'm saying.
you're adaptive.
I would adapt.
Yes.
Somebody was saying that the guy that played Loki is hot too. It was Olivia. Yeah, and I'm not putting him down. I love that guy. But man, Thor. You got, you know, when they play that Led Zeppelin song in his movie Thor Ragnarok, right? Is that a moment or what, Ian?
you're weirdly focused on this, Jay.
I'm just trying to mess with you.
I have never seen the movies. and
What?
I stand by it.
You are a jerk.
I
You
know.
haven't
I'm
seen
sorry. I've never seen any of the
it.
Endgame.
You got to come over for
so-
meatballs and we'll watch that movie.
Okay,
man.
fine. So I eat nothing. Thanks.
So anyway,
That's fine.
this is good. This is good to talk about. I think people need to be reminded of it. I think we have people in there that needed. Steve was talking to someone in the chat, get some clarification going. Like, we're not pointing fingers at anyone.
Now, this is the perfect example of an issue that's really hard to wrap your head around.
Yep.
We grew up in a culture, in a society where heterosexuality was the norm, homosexuality was an aberration. Until we hit adulthood,
Yeah.
our only interaction with the concept of heterosexuality was to make fun of it. Seriously,
Homosexuality,
it was
yeah.
only in the context of
A joke.
a joke, or like, isn't this weird? Think about so many movies, like even
Monty Python definitely did. Even with
Yeah.
the people who were gay,
It was
did it? Kind of.
yeah. I mean, Monty Python, even weird little like horror movies where it's like there's a homosexual couple in the movie, and they're
Yeah.
portrayed as aberrant and bizarre and
Sure.
and like something you roll your eyes at. Like,
But the trans issue- the trans
or
issue
Th-
is a-
Three's Company.
Yeah.
Oh
yeah,
my
yeah,
gosh,
I mean,
John Ritter.
But the homophobia was so baked into our culture.
Absolutely,
growing up.
Yeah.
absolutely. We used to call a bad term was calling someone gay. You're gay, when we were
Yeah.
kids. You know what I mean?
Yeah, it was
And
an
no
insult.
adults would ever correct us. It was a perfectly okay thing to say.
Right,
Perfectly
right.
okay. So I want to say
anyway,
this.
part of like trying to be a little bit more cosmopolitan, mature, growing up, was realizing that we have to evolve beyond that culture that we grew up in, and realize, these are people. This is just all part of the human experience, right? There's no normal or abnormal or whatever. This is a a fairly substantial part of the population. This is their lived experience, and they're people, and that's it. And it's and this is all. Everything else is just bias. It's just cultural bias.
I find it interesting. This is a really interesting thing that I read about, and I talked to people about. I just find this fascinating. Okay, so in the United States, we have this political divide going on.
Yeah.
And this might help people who are Democrat or more liberal or whatever, like, understand where they're coming from. Somebody said that progress has happened too fast in the last 20 years. Too much has changed in our society. And the blowback, make America great again, is the people who fall into that are identifying with the idea that they no longer relate to the reality that they're living in. Just what I said, as a 50-year-old, I don't understand anything. I don't get the modern music. I don't like most of the movies that come out. Like, I'm just culturally detached because I'm no longer the person who's being marketed to anymore. But
we're still being marketed to. Make no mistake.
Well, not to the degree it was when we were kids. But the point I'm making is, I feel bad for the people who are looking at things with so rigid, that they can't change. Like, you can't talk to someone who buys into that. That type of thinking. Hey, people that are trans, they're people, and they're in a situation that they can't control, and they're trying to live their life, and they're trying to be accepted and be a part of society, and be, not be stared at or made fun of or beat up.
Well,
But
if you look at history, though, it's very common for whenever you introduce any progressive idea and you make some progress, there's a backlash.
There's a backlash, and this
There's
is the
always a
backlash. But it makes sense,
But
though.
the good news is that it's like you take 2 steps forward, then there's a backlash, and you drag it back a step, and then it powers through even more.
Yeah,
There's a
progress.
backlash to the backlash.
Yes, of course, yeah.
So
Back.
I'm hoping for that to kick in. Well, we will see. Unfortunately, there's a cultural level where I think that is happening on a cultural level, but on a political level, other factors come into play.
Yeah.
And we have a lot of political dysfunction in America, which means there's an increasing disconnect between where the culture is and where the politics is.
Yeah.
And we need to figure out how to fix that, because it's getting to like crisis levels.
It's getting scary.
It's getting
out there.
bad. Yeah.
Yeah, we have the debate tomorrow. It's scary. Like every one of these things that happens, if whoever you're voting for, if your guy has a bad night tomorrow night, it's scary, right? Everybody wants their man to win or whatever. I've never felt this way about any political debate ever before. I've never felt the stakes so high. Like, oh my God, really, we want to see things go a particular way because of the fact that we're scared of the future. But anyway, guys, I think this was a cool conversation. I think we need to have it more often. I think there's a lot of people out there that could benefit from having a deeper understanding of the biology.
But just, back off the judgmentalism and the fire and brimstone. The idea is, yes, just acknowledge this is a challenging issue for people to wrap their head around, even if they mean well. And I do think this is a perfect example of an issue where taking a thoughtful, nurturing approach is the best. It's like, well, let's just think about this together. We obviously want what's best for people, right? Most of the people who have anti-trans attitudes aren't evil people who want to harm other people. Harm, it may be the effect of their belief, but that's not the intent. They've been convinced that the gay and trans community are grooming kids, to be abused.
That's crazy.
They're wrong.
That's crazy.
That's a myth that was manufactured to make them outraged.
You want to talk about institutionalized
but the
crap?
fact that they are outraged isn't necessarily
They
their
think
fault.
that's institutionalized, that's cooked into the way things work. Look at what the freaking Catholic Church did. Moving pedophiles around the country so they wouldn't get arrested. That's a freaking reality.
Pedophilia.
That happened.
Yeah.
And people really don't talk about it. It's like I still am blown away that the blowback was about zero for the Catholic Church for that. One of the biggest hush jobs in freaking global history. It's happening everywhere.
Yeah.
And they knew about it and they fucking hit it. I just can't wrap my head around that. Oh, whatever,
It was such a betrayal.
Yeah, it was unreal. It's like it turned into the joke that priests are all pedophiles. That's why when I see priests today, I'm like, whoa, that's the blowback for me, at least. That's what it did to me. Anyway,
speaking of cover up, it's time for Ian teaches Jay and Steve about something they definitely are probably not familiar with and don't want to know about.
Watermelon.
Dr. Disrespect. Anybody in the chat?
Boy.
Anyway, it's not important. Actually, let's not do this. This is a meme.
What did he do?
He is a very famous streamer, and he got banned off of Twitch 4 years ago, and it came out that he was messaging underage girls. So
he's wearing a wig there.
Oh yeah, he's been doing it for the last 7 years. So
okay.
He's got the douchebag glasses.
Yeah, and he is one. So anyway, we'll skip that. Anyway, back to the morality stuff. I figured we could talk about the shopping cart theory, if you guys are familiar with that concept, and it's named after the YouTube video.
This really pisses off a lot of people.
So the shopping cart is the ultimate litmus test for whether a person is capable of self-governing. To return the shopping cart is an easy, convenient task, and one in which... Hold on, sorry, the computer's trying to restart. Stop. We all recognize as the correct, appropriate thing to do. To return the shopping cart is objectively right. There are no situations other than dire emergencies in which a person is not able to return their shopping cart. Simultaneously, it is not illegal to abandon your shopping cart. Therefore, the shopping cart presents itself as an apex example of whether or not a person... I read that wrong. Whether a person will do what is right without being forced to do it. You could read the rest of everybody else.
Yeah,
but what do you guys think of that concept in general?
I mostly agree with it, of course. I mean, I am every single time I have a shopping cart, I go through the same mental gymnastics.
Calculus.
I'm like, I don't want to do it, and I always end up doing it. I don't want to do it. If my kids are in the car, they're crazy, and I don't know what they're going to do, and I'm always trying to come up with excuses to not do it. And then I'm like, am I going to be that guy? No. and I put it in there. Good.
Now, do you think it's a little bit of the fundamental attribution error, Steve? I know you've talked about this before, but...
Well, yeah, there may be external factors that get in the way of somebody returning the shopping cart. You can't make assumptions about a single instance. But are there internal factors as well? I think, sure, there's both internal and external factors.
Yeah.
I would say I return the shopping cart 99% of the time. The only time I haven't done it is when there's no place to return the cart to, right? So it's like, what do they want us to do with the carts? It's not obvious. It's not clear. So ambiguity is always a big
and if it's
hurdle.
Crazy raining or something.
Yeah, or it's like you're parked on the other side of the parking lot and... there's no place to bring the cart to. Am I supposed to bring it all the way back to the store? Other people have clearly left their carts all over, there. So there are some times where I'm like, well, this is clearly what's being done. They hired some guy to go collect the carts because they didn't pay for a place to put the carts, and so it's on them. But that is a rare exception. So there are external factors, distance, weather, kids, do you have a sprained ankle, whatever.
That's an interesting point you brought up, because I bring this up because this blew up as of late. It was a couple of weeks ago, honestly, but this woman said, "I'm not returning my shopping cart."
I guess her time is more important than
well,
everybody else's.
Dr. Leslie Dobson, she's a doctor, so she's right. No, so anyway, she makes an interesting point about it. Let's just watch it. She also kind of blew up for obvious reasons.
I'm not returning my shopping cart, and you can judge me all you want. I'm not getting my groceries into my car, getting my children into the car, and then leaving them in the car to go return the cart. So if you're going to give me a dirty look, fuck off.
So obviously, I think she's baiting the internet a little bit with that, because she clearly...
Look, the bottom line here is we live in a society.
Oh, he said it.
We live in a society.
The Joker.
We've got to do things to make it nice for everybody. If everybody threw their coffee cup out the window when they're driving to work, it would be shitty out on the roads, and there'd be garbage everywhere. And then we'd have to pay people to pick it up, and it's like we don't want to develop that. So that she was totally baiting.
Well, all right, there is another layer here too.
Okay.
And you could say that she has a point, even though she doesn't explicitly state this point. And because you could question, like, well, whose job is it to return the cart? And there is this phenomenon where industry creates this cultural belief and personal responsibility to take care of things like that, because they don't want to do it themselves.
Like
right?
recycling?
So like recycling, or littering.
Or littering,
right?
that's
So,
true.
but this is like, if you don't return your cart by yourself, you're a bad person. I.e., we don't want to pay people to go collect the carts and return them to the store as a part of the service that we're providing. So we make it a cultural pressure. Same thing as, well, we want to switch from glass bottles to plastic bottles, and so we're going to make being a litter bug, like you're a bad person if you're a litter bug. This was literally an industry campaign to shift blame onto the public.
Yeah.
And based upon everything Jay's saying, it's a society. We all got to do our part. You know what I mean? Because which are legitimate, but they could be exploited in order to shift responsibility.
Yeah, they
onto
did it.
Everybody,
They
and they did it. Same thing. Like, okay, we recycle, but like, how much like rigmarole does the average person need to go through to sort their recycling into? I see people at the recycling thing with the bags of bottles, feeding them in one at a time to get their $3 back for all, whatever. It's like, is that really the best we could do here? That we're putting that much, like, my time is of so little value that I have to be sorting recycling. We can't just have people who are paid to do it, or have it be the corporates or machines do whatever.
And then one step out from that, Steve, is I keep reading things about how recycling is bullshit.
Well, it depends on, not all of it.
But
it depends.
a huge part of it,
It
though.
depends. Some make sense, some doesn't. With plastic is where it's like dodgy. But aluminum and tin,
Aluminum, good.
absolutely.
Absolutely. But let's just say
Our
something.
town doesn't recycle glass anymore because it's not worth it. But tin and
What
aluminum,
the hell are
absolutely.
we doing? Like I was thinking, I finished a gallon of milk, okay, and I'm like, that's a big chunk of plastic.
Yeah.
And it pisses me off because I'm like, I don't have an option. Like, the only way I can get this is a skeptic conundrum.
Yeah.
The only way that I can get a non-plastic milk jug is to buy
A
organic. I have to buy organic, and I won't do it. God damn it!
Just buy a cow.
but I will do it for milk because I can't deal with the plastic.
Yeah.
What the hell are we doing with these daily disposable plastic? What's
So
wrong?
so there are things that we really should be fixing at a
What's wrong with
societal-
aluminum? Why can't we just have all that be aluminum?
Yeah. We
And
could.
they have these.
It probably flavors the milk.
Or
a
think
little
about
bit,
global
right?
warming, right? So it's
maybe
like, should we really be shaming people into lowering their carbon footprint? Is that really where the blame and the responsibility is on each individual person to try to squeeze a little bit of efficiency into their life or whatever. Not that we don't have personal responsibility. I think we do, but shifting that responsibility to the individual is a strategy to get industry off the hook.
Aluminum is infinitely recyclable.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
I mean, we're lucky, and there's a ton of it. It's in the dirt everywhere on the planet.
Yeah.
It's every freaking where. We could just
one of the most common elements.
quadruple our aluminum, rotation that we have, and I don't need to see the ketchup. I don't need to see it in the bottle.
Mm-hmm.
I know they put preservatives in there.
But
It's
this
fucking
ketchup
fine.
needs to be squeezable, though.
You just go like this. You do that every day anyway. Anyway.
All right,
So, but the point is,
Bad example, but anyway.
the point is,
I get
though,
your point.
think about, but just
But instead
think
of
about
plastic
it.
bottles, we should have aluminum bottles.
But every
for
day,
water.
where I'm throwing away plastic every day, I don't have the options. Like I would love to go to the supermarket and fill up my, my laundry detergent thing over and over. If I use that plastic thing for a few years, that's great.
Yeah.
But they don't even give you the option.
Yeah.
It's as if they don't give a shit. Because industry, and this is where governments have to exist. The governments have to level regulation that makes industry make positive decisions, because industries 100% of the time make decisions that are in their best interest. Except maybe for a sock brand here and there who donates socks, you know what I mean? But that's not going to move the freaking needle.
Well, I agree. I mean, this is the thing. Like, if we're gonna like deal with plastic pollution, deal with global warming, we can't do this through individual decisions, individual people. It's got to be done at a societal level, and we can't be distracted by, you're a litter bug, or you're not returning the cart, or you're using too much electricity. How about we close down that freaking coal plant? Why don't we do that?
Mm-hmm.
That
It's frustrating because you think at this point with global warming and the obvious nature of it existing, like it's so obvious that global warming is real. Even if you're not reading about it and you're not a scientist, like shit has changed. And this isn't like, the Earth is just getting warm now, and so we're in a cycle. Like it's freakishly getting warmer, super fast. Like and it's, one of the things that we could do.
mm-hmm.
We could dial back plastics immensely and stop polluting the environment that way. I know that's not going to help global warming that much, but I mean, it is a tangible thing that companies could decide to do. Okay, so let's say that they use glass and it's a little bit heavier to ship. Yeah, it is. It's going to be heavier to ship. But glass does not hurt the environment. You know what I mean? Glass is environmentally awesome. We should be using it all. We used to remember ketchup used to be in glass bottles. Everything, soda cans used to be glass bottles. That was fine.
I like soda in glass.
Yeah, me too. I think it has a better tactile
Yeah.
thing. But the bottom line is we're not doing any of these things. Like companies aren't doing it. The governments aren't doing shit. And it's scaring people who are mindful of the fact that, look, the summers are coming earlier now.
Yeah.
Like you only got to go back 10 years to go, wow, none of this was happening. It's really happening now. What's it going to be like in 50 years? We are not rolling up our sleeves and solving it. Mm-hmm. As a matter of fact, we have a political party in the United States who wants to undo the little that we've done.
Yeah.
The little that we've done.
We would like to say that if Liquid Death is listening, we would take a sponsorship from them. That's
Absolutely.
the water company that makes aluminum,
And
'cause
Ian,
death
did you
to
know that
plastic-
there's different versions of Liquid Death?
Really?
I saw, I don't remember where I was, but I
Flavors or just...
saw. No. They have
Free range?
but there's multiple ones. There's seltzer ones.
Oh, they have
Seltzer?
seltzer?
Yeah,
Oh, they have
yeah,
seltzer?
it's great.
They have a little
Yeah.
bubbly?
Yep.
Little bubbly. That's cool.
Yeah, I just
Yeah,
don't.
they seem pretty cool.
I don't like the idea that we're just going on like everything is okay, like it's the 1980s. It's not. It's not.
It wasn't okay in the 1980s.
No, but you
too.
know what
We
I
just had a
mean.
little bit more to do.
We didn't. Yeah, I guess you're
Yeah,
right.
just
Whatever.
wasn't
We
a
just had
Agenda.
more cocaine.
Yeah.
Yeah, there was a lot of coke, and a good reason why we need coke out there, because Biden needs the coke, doesn't he, to be able to do the debate? I was talking to a guy on Facebook. Oh God, I went to high school with
get
him.
me
He's a good guy.
started.
He's a good guy. I liked him when we were kids. He's a sweetheart.
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
Just-
But man, he's dyed in the wool. And I'm like, really, man? Like, you really think they're giving him cocaine? You really think? I'm like, you can't undo dementia with cocaine. There isn't
Can
a
you?
drug out there that would cover dementia for 4 or 5 hours. Like, you lose it
There
and
is
it's gone.
no magic anti-dementia drug
No.
out there. I mean,
But
I'm a
you know-
neurologist, in case you're not aware. There is no magic dementia pill that they're giving Biden, or it's ridiculous.
But Steve, immune. Completely immune. I'm like, this is what the science says. Look it up for yourself. I'm not making this up.
Yeah.
I didn't write the websites out there that have the studies that tell you this. And he literally was like, nope, nope, no interest. Almost as if he were saying, doesn't follow the paradigm that I believe, so go screw yourself.
Yeah.
It's so frustrating.
Why would he need Coke? He's a robot, right? Didn't they upload his brain to a robot or something?
And they're already pre-spinning. They
Transhumanist?
call it they call what let's not get into
Well,
that.
no, they're saying
They're pre-spinning.
he's going to be terrible because he's demented, but if he does well, it's because he's on drugs.
Yeah.
Right.
And then Trump actually said, I might just blow the debate. I might just lose deliberately.
Just lose.
Really, dude. Really. This is a guy that cheats at his own golf course to win the tournament, and you're going to lose the national presidential debate deliberately?
He did bring up how they don't want you to have water anymore. I don't know if you heard that one. The water cap is on everything.
Oh, Olivia, I am reading too much about the presidential
Yes,
election.
you're reading too much.
I am all in. I'm all in. It's the biggest freaking crisis of my adult life.
Yeah.
It's so bad.
There were a couple other follow-ups to that thing, but I don't know if it matters. It's kind of like
Yeah, I
the
mean,
lady.
it's scary. It's scary
Yeah.
when like Project 2025. I don't know if anybody international really has their head wrapped around this. Olivia, I recommend you read on Project 2025. When you read what they have planned to
And
do,
they're stating it outright.
oh yeah, they're not.
it's
they're
not
hiding it
It's
anymore.
in plain sight.
When you read that,
It is scary.
Your hair will stand up. Your hair will stand up on the back of your neck. It's so
Well,
unbelievably
the short version
frightening.
is we want to replace career experts in the executive government with political appointees who will toe the party line.
Yep.
Right. So it's all about giving the president this is the unitary executive theory, right? That the president basically is king of America,
Mm-hmm.
and also they're looking for ways to bypass Congress.
Yep.
It's like, well, we're going to use these presidential powers to just stop funding anything we don't want to be funded,
Yep.
even if Congress says we're going to fund it. So it's like they want to destroy the Constitution. That's their overt goal. It's like not hidden.
This is the freaking playbook on making an autocrat.
Yes.
This is it. This is what Hitler was
Schedule
doing.
F,
This
right.
is what they do. It literally mirrors it to such a degree that you might as well just slap a swastika on there. You know what I mean? Anyway,
Steve,
moving
on.
I have to go prep for the show.
Oh yes.
Mm-hmm.
Was there one more thing you wanted to do, Ian?
Let's see if there's any other ones that can be a quickie.
I'm just curious. What's the watermelon?
Oh, right, the watermelon. Yeah, we should do that one, I guess.
Let's
that's the
do
good
that,
one.
and then I'll go.
What's
And then
not the rubber watermelon?
Oh, do you want to do that for TikTok?
Yes, I do.
Oh, okay, so we'll save that for TikTok.
So can you quickly tell me, isn't that just like the fruit didn't have enough water when it was growing?
Yeah.
That's
Yeah.
it. Okay, I was right.
Or
it was overripe
it wasn't
or something.
refrigerated.
Yeah. Oh, right.
Yeah.
Yeah, that could be it too. So we'll save that one. This one maybe is just kind of funny because it's just so bizarre. I don't know if you wanted to do this one, Steve. I doubt it because
No.
it's so.
This cryptid here
Oh, yeah, I
and this
saw-
documentation,
Steve, look at
which a field camera was used, it was seen in an area, and a colleague
Seen
of
in
mine
an
from a
area.
major university set up a field camera, and this
I
is
just
what
finished
they got.
attending the American
Now,
Nuclear
this is
Science
known
Conference
as a
here, and
rock
the last
person
session,
or rock.
Why
The
are two
last
things
paper
playing?
that was
Hold on,
presented
sorry.
was
So,
the most
I
exciting
found this one.
presentation
So
I've
somebody
ever
is
seen.
shoving a mask into a hole,
Says you.
and this guy is saying that these are stone people.
Yeah.
Stone people.
Stone people.
Oh, remember that guy?
Remember this guy? I don't know if I'm gonna get claimed.
Approach. Yeah, that
But that I don't want to play
Yeah,
the
yeah,
audio
yeah.
because it might get
my
claimed.
God.
Let's see if I can just jump to the part where he eats a rock. No, he's eating a rock somewhere. Anyway, never-ending story. If you guys
Yep.
forget.
Yeah.
That's
You gotta
what
watch
made me
out for
think
those
of
stone
that.
people. They'll get through your wall, man.
That's true.
They're coming for you.
They're coming for you.
And I found this one, and I'm looking at it, and I'm like, does this guy really believe it? Is this sensational?
I don't
Is
know.
this is this infotainment?
I know I got 303,000 likes on it, 11 million views.
Yeah.
So he's playing it, and he's also promoting his dog training service. So if you're a little cryptid and dog training at the same time, that's fun. Anyway, I think
TikTok sucks.
TikTok is,
And he is
Terrible.
TikTok
It's
is
so
weird.
it's so off the hinges, man. It's like, get the frick out of here.
Which one?
All right, so I'm gonna go. I got a lot of prep work to do. I'm prepping for the 1000th show. Did you get my email? I just sent you an update email
Okay.
on where we're at. But the bottom line is that people have been going in and time stamping the best bits
Yep.
throughout our 1,000 episodes. I still need help. If you want to help do this, what I need people to do is listen to a few episodes, and then anytime we say something funny or impactful or worth or noteworthy, there's a spreadsheet that you could fill in the timestamps for me, and then I'll go in and I'll pick the ones that work. Melissa, you have no excuse. You could drive to me, and I will give you a trucker hat. That's the deal. And you got to make me dinner. Anyway, so I'm doing it, and it's a lot of work.
Okay.
It is. So I've been filling my days and nights doing that stuff. So anyway, we have shows coming up. We have 2 extravaganzas in Chicago on August 17th. One of them starts at 2:30, and one of them starts at 8 p.m. And then on August 18th, right outside of Chicago, we are doing our 1,000th episode live, 5 hours. There'll be guests coming in remotely that we will be chit-chatting with. George Hrab will be interviewing all of us. We will be listening to a lot of these clips that I'm gathering of past shows, of the best moments. We have a ton of stuff planned for that show. As you know, we can do 5 hours with our eyes closed. It's going to go by quick, but it's going to be a lot of fun. So if you're interested in helping out with the, listening to the show and getting me, timestamps on those bits, you can go to the SGU website. That's theskepticsguide.org. And then if you're interested in coming to either of these shows on the same website, there's buttons all there for all this stuff right on the homepage. We'd really appreciate it. Steve, do you have any interest in going to Japan?
At some point, I'd love to go to Japan.
I think we should start planning it.
You have to schedule it.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Definitely.
figure out when
It's a
that's
big deal.
scheduled.
I mean, it's going.
Well, we got the next total eclipse coming up.
Yeah, that's the other thing that we got to talk about. Yeah, but I'm getting to a point. I'm like, I got to start checking these boxes.
Yeah.
I really want to go to Japan. It's one of the things I've always wanted to do. It'd be cool if we could have a conference there or something. I don't know if there's enough, English speaking
I think
people
our
there.
probably best bet would be to have a conference in Hong Kong and then hit.
And go to both.
Yeah,
That's going to be very expensive.
Yes.
But worth it. Olivia, thank you for doing episode 100 last night. All right, you could put in as many comments about the show, as each of those shows, as you want. If you're running out of space, just put them all together in one of the comments. I'll figure it out. All right, I'm going to roll. You got TikToks to do?
Yes. Going to be ticking and talking.
Yep. Ian, thank you so much. All right, guys. I'll see you all hopefully Friday. No,
Are we doing Friday?
I can't do Friday.
How come?
My wife is getting surgery.
What's she getting surgery on?
She has to get a polyp removed.
Okay.
I might be able to do it, though. Like, she's going to do it earlier in the day. Like, I don't know if,
All right, we'll figure it out.
Well, I'll play it by ear. All right, I'm out.
Oh, we can get a guest.
I'll see you guys soon.
TikTok is mad at us.
Why is TikTok
They
mad at us?
didn't like that I mentioned that one song by Eric Clapton that he sings, and he talks about a certain white substance. Oh, hey, that one.
Yeah.
They yelled at
They
me.
don't like us to mention that word?
Apparently, they said regulated something or other. And I was like, okay, bro, relax, okay? It was the '80s. Doesn't count. All right, so we got that going. Oh, which ones did we want to do? I didn't ask you before.
Well, you give the watermelon
We'll
one.
do the watermelon to start. Okay. Where's that watermelon one?
What were the other ones?
Oh, there was a weird chiropractic video, but I think I didn't send that. There was
What
the
was
mirror one. There was.
What was that first one?
Let me go. I have them all listed out. So we had the conspiracy theory of the Great Fires.
Yeah, that one.
That was okay. Good. I'm glad.
And the inflammation in the brain one.
Inflammation. Yes, that's a good one. Okay.
Those three.
The aluminum foil. Or
No.
our brains are
the
everything
Mark
is inflammation.
Hyman loser guy.
Yeah, that dingus.
That
Okay,
guy.
this. Okay, we'll get rid of this one.
I want to start with the fire
The
one.
Olympics make no sense. What? The fire one? Oh yeah. Let's do the Great Fire. That one's already in the title as well of our YouTube video, so this will go hand in hand with that. Oh, let me stop recording over here. Do a little TikTok picture-in-picture. Boom. Oh, you know what? Let me drag that to this one. Stand by, everybody. It's happening. Don't worry. There we go.
I don't understand why this little girl is in the beginning of this.
This is like a common thing where they duet it. Like she'll probably have posted this on her profile, and then somebody just duets like and adds onto it.
But she's like just there for 2 seconds.
Yeah, I know. That's like it's a common thing. It also like goes into the list of all the other ones that somebody else that have like responded to her. So it's it's just the way TikTok functions, or a function of it. Okay, let me just wait for this to finish while chat is chatting. I'm a long-time listener, but it's been a while since I engaged with the show. Well, welcome back. Is not Discord from the web. Discord is for our patrons. So if you're on Patreon and you're a patron, you have to be at a level. It doesn't. You can't just like be the free tier, because like that.
So it's a $5 a month.
Yeah, you got to be the $5. The cyborg one, the free tier, like we don't even really have access. You can just like follow, I guess, for updates, or if we post something publicly. But anyway, all right, here we go. Let me unmute it.
Go to Google. Seriously, go to Google and type in Great Fire of and then input your city. Matter of fact, input any city. You know what you're going to find? You're going to find that there was a big fire in every major city in the United States in the late 18 to early 1900s. Why, you ask? It's a good question. It's not by coincidence, and you best believe a lot of history was destroyed in those fires. And it's crazy, because we hear about all these ancient societies that had all this advanced technologies. Where did it all go? How did it all just disappear?
All of these buildings all around here, as I told in class last night, they're ancient. There's a whole city underneath this city. They went and burned all the major cities, the major energy centers.
We burned almost every physical book in the country. This was...
I assume that's enough, right?
Yeah, it's more than enough.
All right.
This camera over here.
Yep. We're rolling.
The core claim here that there has been a major fire in most, large cities in the United States between, say, 1850 and 1920 is correct. That is true. However, I wouldn't leap from that fact to some bizarro conspiracy theory about these fires were set to somehow destroy historical records and hide the fact of ancient civilizations. That's nonsense. But if you take a more constructive approach, that is an interesting question. Why were there so many fires? You could learn some actual interesting history. So historians actually talk about the urban fires in the U.S. There's the antebellum period, from around 1800 to around 1860. There were lots of fires then too. But then they really took off between 1860 and 1920 before coming down to more modern levels. What was happening in that period of time that caused this peak of urban fires? Well, a number of things, but the big thing was the Industrial Revolution. Cities were being transformed rapidly during this period of time. The populations were exploding, so there were a lot more houses and buildings. They were built on top of each other. They were built closer together. These buildings were mostly built of wood. In addition, industry involved a lot of combustibles. We burned a lot of stuff in industry, right? So there's a lot of wood, gunpowder. In the mid 19th century was also the transition from essentially biofuels, like oils sourced from trees and whatnot, to petrochemicals, to natural gas and oil. In fact, many modern cities in that time period were introducing gas street lamps, right? So now we're pumping gas through pipes into cities in order to light the street lamps. This did increase the brightness, of these cities at night, but also many of the fires that happened during this time were because of a broken, natural gas pipe. So we essentially had all the conditions were there for massive fires. People are cooking with fire, they're heating with fire, they're lighting with fire, where there's lots of combustible materials, there's lots of wooden buildings, and if when a fire did break out, there was a much greater chance that it will spread to the next building, that the fire would get out of control, or that it would hit a place where gunpowder was being stored or something flammable was being stored. And then so these what in previous centuries would be a minor fire now turns into a major uncontrollable conflagration, right? Where entire neighborhoods burn to the ground, entire sections of cities burn to the ground. Also, we have to think about what the state of the art of firefighting was at this time. In the beginning part of the 1800s, essentially you had a bucket brigade, right? That's how they would get house catches on fire. You get a bucket brigade going and you put the fire out, it's done. But when you have whole neighborhoods, hundreds of buildings going up, you need a more robust response. Like, you're not going to make a dent in a fire like that with the bucket brigade. So that's when you started to get professional firefighting organizations or volunteer many firefighting organizations with then, the hand crank pumps and then eventually the steam powered pumps. And that was really the only way. But even those organized firefighting organizations with some kind of pump, and then you also start to get the fire hoses and water being pumped into cities more. Even with that, a major fire would overwhelm their resources and would get out of control. So between 1850 and 1920, yeah, pretty much there was a fire in most major cities in the U.S. for all of these reasons, but then we got that under control because of reforms, because of many things that were done. So there were building codes that made buildings less prone to catch fire. More buildings in cities were built out of brick than out of wood. Streets were widened. Minimum distances were created between buildings, so fire would be less likely to jump from one building to the next. There was more water being pumped into cities and more fire hydrants to get access to the water. There were more professional and larger firefighting organizations to put out fires quickly so they wouldn't spread. And then with that, we get down to more modern levels of major urban fires that we're better able to control and don't spread as much. So there's a lot of interesting history here. There's no mystery. And there certainly isn't any reason to think that there's some kind of bizarro conspiracy to hide, the hidden truth about ancient civilizations. Why you would leap to that as the explanation, I have absolutely no idea. But when you read the actual history, you might actually learn something interesting.
Alrighty, very good. Okay, we can move on to this guy. Jump scare.
This guy.
All right, here we go. So this one is inflammation. Here we go.
The brain diseases that we see, right, whether it's depression, Alzheimer's, even autism and ADD, are inflammation of the brain on fire. And omega-3s are powerful anti-inflammatories. You see, up to 60% of our brain is made up of fat. So you literally are a fathead, right? Half of that fat, by the way, is omega-3 fats. So they're essential. These are called essential fatty acids. They're not optional in your diet, and yet most of our diets are deficient in these essential fatty acids. So they're like a vitamin or mineral. If you don't get them, you're going to get deficiency, and it shows up as depression, dementia, and a whole host of other things.
I might cut that shorter. Anyway,
yeah.
Okay.
Ready? Yeah. I'm sorry, but this is just wrong. All of those neurological conditions, Alzheimer's, ADD, autism, depression, they're not all inflammation, right? We know a lot about what causes Alzheimer's disease, and it's not considered an inflammatory disease. Now, there may be some inflammation going on at some point, and that may be contributing to it, but it's at its core, Alzheimer's disease is a disease of abnormal protein folding and collecting in the brain, causing the fibrillary tangles, etc. The tau protein and the beta amyloid. We've spent decades studying Alzheimer's. It's very complicated. Trying to say that it's all inflammation is a ridiculously oversimplified statement. That is simply not true. And he's trying to make this narrative that you could therefore treat it with anti-inflammatories, which again, if that were the case, we have way more powerful anti-inflammatories than omega-3, and they don't treat Alzheimer's disease. So that core claim there is silly. ADD is, attention hyperactivity disorder. That's an executive function disorder. That's a problem of just the robustness of the frontal lobes, so-called executive function. Autism is genetic. We know it's developmental. We know this. It is not inflammatory. There's absolutely zero reason to think that it's inflammatory. But he is creating this simplistic narrative that all of these things are inflammatory, omega-3 is an anti-inflammatory, and therefore it'll treat all of these things. It's just not true. It's just that. It's this simplistic narrative because he's selling something. It is not what we are in any way reflective of our current understanding of these neurological conditions.
Very good. Okay. And the piece de resistance.
Piece de resistance.
Ooh,
The rubber watermelon.
The rubber watermelon. Didn't expect this one, now did you, everybody? So yeah, this was also leaked a little bit in the topics. Let's see, where is it? There we go. Now we're queued up.
Yeah.
All right, here we go. Let me unmute.
For some mysterious reason, in the past few months, there's been loads of videos popping up all over social media of people buying what looks like fake food. It all started just a couple of weeks ago in the United States when several people started noticing that there was something off about the watermelon that they were buying on the supermarkets.
So I got this watermelon up, and I like to rinse my watermelon before I cut it, and it's like pinning. Does anybody has problems with their watermelon like this? Oh my gosh.
This is the craziest thing I've ever seen.
It sounds like the goat is dying.
There are dozens of videos where people buy watermelon from the supermarket and it looks strange. Sometimes it looks like plastic, sometimes it makes these weird noises, and sometimes, or many times actually, it feels as if it's made out of rubber.
So I cut watermelon for my kids, and they're all bringing it.
All right, cool. Yeah, I'll probably jump around a little bit, but
that's right.
All right, we're rolling.
So, are they selling plastic or rubber watermelons now? So this is not new. This is a known phenomenon. This is what happens to pumpkins. Let me just start over. So this is not a new phenomenon. This is what happens to watermelons if either they're not properly refrigerated or they don't have enough water when they're growing. So the proteins in the watermelon they change. They could get linked up, and you can get that rubbery kind of consistency. This can happen with a lot of other fruits and vegetables as well. So no mystery here. This is simply what happens when the watermelons are not properly, grown and stored and transported, right? There's no conspiracy here, but again, the implications in the video, and if you read the comments, there's a number of alternate hypotheses to explain this non-mystery raised. One is that they are now 3D printing food. Why would they do that? First of all, can we 3D print something that would look like a watermelon? No, we don't have the ability to 3D print food like that. Not with that kind of structure and texture and whatever. So it's just, we don't really have the technology to do that. But more importantly, 3D printing food like that would be really expensive. Why would they do that? Why would they replace a cheap watermelon that you could grow for a couple of dollars or something, and replace it with something that would be massively expensive to do? It makes absolutely no sense. Another theory that's often raised, a lot of the people in the comments say, well, this is GMOs. This is what happens with GMO food. No, that is absolutely incorrect. First of all, there are no GMO watermelons, right? You can't buy a GMO watermelon. There's none approved. There's none on the market. They don't exist. So no, this is not a GMO phenomenon. Same thing with a lot of the other ones that they show, like avocados and bananas, whatever. These are not GMO varieties. Oftentimes there's not even any GMOs available for the things we're talking about. And why would that be the case anyway? GMO is not just doesn't just alter food in some mysterious way. It's a very specific genetic alteration that has one effect, that we study and then has to get approved. It just doesn't cause the food to be weird, So that's just absolutely not true. But my favorite conspiracy theory in the comment is several commenters wrote simply, Bill Gates. That's it. That's the entire comment, as if somehow he is responsible for 3D printing food or whatever they think is happening because of some kind of Bill Gates related conspiracy theory. So, it's all nonsensical. It has nothing to do with reality. This is, again, not a mystery. This is what happens when you don't properly store watermelons. That's it. This can happen to food. It can get either a mealy consistency or a rubbery consistency if it's overripe, or again, if at some point it had been frozen, it could get mushy, or if it, watermelons are supposed to be refrigerated and transported. If it somehow at some point in the transportation it got too hot, this will happen. By the way, the bubbling watermelon, that's just fermentation, right? If you leave any fruit with a lot of sugar in it too long, it can ferment, and that creates carbon dioxide as a byproduct. And then when you open it up, because the rind of the watermelon would hold all of that in, you cut it open and it starts bubbling out. It's because of the CO2. That's it. Again, no mystery. It's just fermentation. No reason to go reaching for the conspiracy theories here.
All righty.
All right. Did we fix TikTok this week?
Yeah, I think we fixed them up
all right.
enough. Although we keep getting punted occasionally, but it's
punted?
Fine. Yeah, well, when I said that word and then I think something else.
Don't say the word.
Some other thing. They were mad at us for something. What were we talking about? The shopping cart theory. They got mad at us or something.
For what?
I don't have no.
You can't say shopping carts?
No, I think it was the previous something else we were probably talking about. Who knows? Probably because we were talking about gender and whatever, and sometimes they get weird because they're haters. Anyway, so if you have any questions last minute, go ahead and put it in the chat. Otherwise, we're going to bounce, and maybe we'll see you Friday.
Mm-hmm.
We'll work on that.
I will not be here next Wednesday.
Next Wednesday, okay. So we'll table that day, unless we just do a Jay off the rails day. But
I don't know. Gotta be careful about that.
We'll give Steve a remote control cattle prod. Just shut up. Yeah, thanks, everybody. When is SciCon? It's
October, the week before Halloween.
Yes, SciCon 2024. October 24th to the 27th. It's a big one, which I don't know if it's public or not. I'm not going to say anything. Although actually somebody in the chat said it, so it doesn't matter. Yeah, you can see Jay off the rails on his own stream, Jay Time USA. That's fake. Yeah. And makes me sad how these videos have to be made. Yeah, I know, it's true. Let's do a Jay UK special next week. What does that entail? Is he going to the UK? We gonna send Jay to the UK and then he can film from there, maybe. You sent me a question on Discord. Hold on, let's just see that one question in the live stream questions. Here we go. Did we get it?
We're not going to QED this year. We weren't invited.
Bob, message me in the Discord, and then I can maybe see it, because I don't see what your name is. I'm assuming it's Bob the Average, but I don't think it is. Can plastic be considered as a carbon capture deposition mechanism?
I don't think so.
Deposition. No. Not deposition. Yes, Carton Arcs is a funny YouTube channel, and maybe I'll show it to those guys. Not next week, but the week following. I don't see the message, but maybe we'll grab it on Friday, Bob. If if you can. All right, I think that's it for
All right,
this
thank
week,
you, Ian.
everybody.
Thanks
No
for
problem.
everyone for joining us.
And until next time,
See you next
here's
time.
some music.